and welcome to today's Bible study of 2 Kings, and we are in chapter 4. Now chapter 4 is a bit more of a meaty one, so I hope you are ready. You've got yourself a hot drink, maybe you got your Bible and your notepad in front of you, ready to go. Alright, let's tuck in and see what happens. Now there cried a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets unto Elisha, saying, Thy servant my husband is dead, and thou knowest that thy servant did fear the Lord, and the creditor is come to take unto him my two sons to be bondmen. So we've come to Elisha's ministry now. Obviously he succeeded Elijah. Elijah had an amazing miracle where he helped a widow and helped her dead son back to life. And so now we've got an issue where we have another widow now, and Elisha is about to do something. She apparently had great debt, and so the person who was coming wanted to take her children as slaves to work off that debt. Oof. So she was seeking help for her dilemma. And Elisha said unto her, What shall I do for thee? Tell me, what hast thou in the house? And she said, Thine handmaid hath not a thing in the house, save a pot of oil. Then he said, Go borrow 3 vessels abroad, all of thy neighbours, even empty vessels, borrow not a few. And when thou art come in, thou shalt shut the door upon thee and upon thy sons, and shall pour out into all the vessels, and thou shalt set aside that which is full. So she went from him and shut the door upon her and upon her sons, who brought the vessels to her, and she poured out. And it came to pass, when the vessels were full, that she said unto her son, Bring me yet a vessel. And he said unto her, There is not a vessel more. And the oil stayed. Then she came and told the man of God, and he said, Go sell the oil and pay thy debt, and live thou and thy children of the rest. So wow, all this widow had to her name was a single jar of oil. And Elisha told her to borrow all the jugs of oil he could find, or even empty containers that she could find. And she was faithful. That's a common theme. It's a common theme we see here, whether the word's coming from God or whether the word's coming from his prophet. God could fix the problem like that, but what he always asks for is commitment from that person first. Take an act of faith and you will be rewarded. Always, every time. So she had a job to do, to go and collect the jugs, and that she just kept pouring and pouring and pouring, and the jug just wasn't going down. The oil was just staying full, and she was pouring so much she didn't even have enough jugs left to fill it. Never-ending oil. So we are always to respond to his word with faith and obedience. Amazing. And it fell on a day that Elisha passed to Shunem, where was a great woman, and she constrained him to eat bread. And so it was that as oft as he passed by, he turned in thither to eat bread. And she said unto her husband, Behold now, I perceive that this is a holy man of God, which passeth us by continually. So Elisha is now ministering to another woman. She was a prominent woman, very great, that means just like very important. And so she invited him, she recognized that Elisha was a man of God, and she invited him in. Let us make a little chamber, I pray thee, on the wall, and let us set for him there a bed, and a table, and a stool, and a candlestick. And it shall be, when he cometh to us, that he shall turn in thither. And it fell on a day that he came thither, and he turned into the chamber, and lay there. And he said to Gehazi his servant, Call this Shunammite. And when he had called her, she stood before him. And he said unto him, Say now unto her, Behold, thou hast been careful for us with all the care. What is to be done for thee? Wouldest thou be spoken for to the king, or to the captain of the host? And she answered, I dwell among my own people. So Elisha was really grateful for her hospitality and wanted to bless her in return, and so he asked what she wanted. Even if that meant speaking on her behalf to the king. And that was a huge deal, because the king was Ahab's son, who's a little evil, isn't he? So that meant that even though he was really hated, Elisha was really hated by this evil king of Israel, he still had influence. And that's God's hand at work, isn't it? He's still got his people having influence, even in an evil-led society. That's good to know, especially in current day, just saying. And he said, what is then to be done for her? And Gehazi answered, verily she hath no child, and her husband is old. And he said, call her. And when he had called her, she stood in the door. And he said, about this season, according to the time of life, thou shalt embrace a son. Yea. And she said, nay, my lord, thou man of God, do not lie unto thine handmaid. And the woman conceived and bare a son at that season that Elisha had said unto her, according to the time of life. We see this many times in Genesis as well, where someone was promised a son or a child even when the odds were completely against them. Sarah is an example. And it happened. You must believe. So she was like, no, don't lie to me now. Don't lie to me. But through God, all things are possible. And when the child was grown, it fell on a day that he went out to his father to the reapers. And he said unto his father, my head, my head. And he said to a lad, carry him to his mother. And when he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees till noon, and then died. Oh. And she went up and lay him on the bed of the man of God, and shut the door upon him, and went out. And she called unto her husband, and said, send me, I pray thee, one of the young men, and one of the asses, that I may run to the man of God, and come again. And he said, wherefore wilt thou go to him today? It is neither new moon nor Sabbath. And she said, it shall be well. Then she saddled an ass, and said to her servant, drive and go forward, slack not thy riding for me, except I bid thee. So the boy died, and she put him in Elisha's room, and then went to find him, again acting in faith. So she went and came unto the man of God to Mount Carmel. And it came to pass, when the man of God saw her afar off, that he said to Gehazi his servant, behold, yonder is that Shunammite. Run now, I pray thee, to meet her, and say unto her, is it well with thee? Is it well with thy husband? Is it well with the child? And she answered, it is well. And when she came to the man of God to the hill, she caught him by the feet, but Gehazi came near to thrust her away. And the man of God said, let her alone, for her soul is vexed within her, and the Lord hath hid it from me, and hath told not me. Ooh, and hath not told me. Well, interesting. Then she said, did I desire a son of my Lord? Did I not say, do not deceive me? So she's now coming to him, and God didn't reveal the reason to Elisha why she was here. And when the servant came and said, are you okay? She was like, yeah, I'm fine. She didn't want to tell the servant. She wanted to talk to Elisha directly. So she said, why would God give me a son that I didn't ask for directly, only to take him away? Then he said to Gehazi, gird up thy loins, and take my staff in thine hand, and go thy way. If thou meet any man, salute him not, and if any salute thee, answer him not again, and lay my staff upon the face of the child. And the mother of the child said, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. And he arose and followed her. And Gehazi passed on before them, and laid the staff on the face of the child, but there was neither voice nor hearing. Wherefore he went again to meet him, and told him, saying, the child is not awaked. And when Elisha came into the house, behold, the child was dead, and laid upon his bed. He went therefore and shut the door upon them twain, and prayed unto the Lord. And he went up and lay upon the child, and put his mouth upon his mouth, his eyes upon his eyes, and his hands upon his hands. And he stretched himself upon the child, and the flesh of the child waxed warm. Then he returned and walked in the house to and fro, and went up and stretched himself upon him. And the child sneezed 7 times. And the child opened his eyes. And he called Gehazi and said, call this Shunammite. So he called her, and when she was come in unto him, he said, take up thy son. Then she went in and fell at his feet, and bowed herself to the ground, and took up her son, and went out. Wow. So the servant was sent with the staff first to put on the child, which didn't work. It made no difference. So Elisha prayed to the Lord and lay directly over the boy's flesh, and that didn't work. He did become warm, but it didn't fully wake him up. Elisha then paced the house. Maybe he was praying, and then he bent down over him again, and this time he woke up and he gave the son back. Now this is a huge miracle, because this is only the second time now that someone was raised from the dead in the Old Testament, and it's kind of given us a foretelling into what Jesus would do. And Elisha came again to Gilgal, and there was a death in the land, and the sons of the prophets were sitting before him. And he said unto his servant, Set on the great pot, and seethe pottage for the sons of the prophets. And one went out into the field to gather herbs, and found a wild vine, and gathered thereof wild goods, his lap full, and came and shared them into the pot of pottage, for they knew them not. So they poured out for the men to eat. And it came to pass, as they were eating of the pottage, that they cried out and said, O thou man of God, there is death in the pot. And they could not eat thereof. But he said, Then bring meal. And he cast into it the pot. And he said, Pour out for the people, that they may eat. And there was no harm in the pot. So Elisha's miracles continued. So this was during a time of famine. And the prophets were just eating whatever they could find. And by saying there was death in the pot, they were saying that they had put some poisonous things in there, because they were just eating all they could find. But he didn't know what they were. He didn't know that they were poisonous. And so the prophets ate some and cried out, like, there is death in this pot. Now, there's a dilemma, because the prophets are responsible for, getting God's word to his people. And having that poisonous herb in there, I suppose it's kind of symbolic, isn't it? It could be that that's a contamination of some heresy. It could be false words that are going in and mixing heresy with the truth. Like you just can't. Even a tiny bit of heresy ruins the entire truth. Just like a tiny bit of poisonous herbs will ruin the whole meal and will kill, right? So it was really important for them to stick clearly to the word and not have any of this contamination or spiritual sickness. And it was only when the substance of flour was put in that the food became edible. So it's only when God's truth is in us that the heresy can be wiped out, because we know the truth and we can determine what is heresy and what isn't, right? So that's kind of amazing. So he cured the stew so that everyone could eat, and the Lord provided for his servants in times of such distress. And there came a man from Baal-Shalisha, and brought the man of God bread of the first fruits, 20 loaves of barley, and full ears of corn in the husk thereof. And he said, Give unto the people that they may eat. And his servitor said, What should I get this before 100 men? He said again, Give the people that they may eat. For thus saith the Lord, They shall eat and shall leave thereof. So he set it before them, and they did eat and left thereof, according to the word of the Lord. So again, we've got another miracle in a time of famine. And there were only 20 loaves of bread to feed 100 men. But Elisha commanded that it be given to the people to eat. And as it was distributed, everyone just had enough. There was enough leftovers even. And this is also a foreshadowing of the miracles of Jesus, who would feed with bread and fish as well. So I want to make a note of that. And I'll just put here, God always provides, even in times of famine. And again, I'm thinking of that now, relating to the modern day with, this huge crisis we've got of recession and cost of living. And there are going to be many people who are going to be struggling, and there will be a famine in the land. There's food shortages. It's a rough time right now, and it's only getting worse. And that can be scary. And I suppose this story coming up at this time is quite powerful to remind us that he always provides through miracles, there is a way. There will always be enough, and even some left over by the sounds of it. He'll find a way. So that's something that we need to remember and take comfort in. Wow, so that's incredible. So we're seeing Elisha's multiple miracles here. He made sure the widow had enough oil after oil after oil. There was so much oil that she could sell it and save her sons. We had the woman was blessed with a boy who died and then brought back to life. And then we've got the prophets here during a famine, didn't have enough food. Their food was poisoned by mistake, and then Elisha fixed it, and then there wasn't enough bread to feed 100 men, and it just miraculously there was again. And it was all God's hand, of course. And all these miracles that we saw here from Elisha and other prophets are a foretelling of what Jesus would do in his miracles, and ultimately his ultimate sacrifice to save us as well. So that's really beautiful. I really enjoyed that. It's a good one, encouraging and exciting. And tomorrow we have chapter 5. So yes, please do leave any takeaways you have about chapter 4, if there are things that you would like to point out, or things that you just want to reiterate that we've talked about, that you want, that affected you or stood out to you. And yes, do join me for tomorrow for chapter 5, and I will speak to you then, God willing. Have a great day. Bye.